This is Kathy from Gadget Stop 321, and in today's video I'm going to be taking a look at Diamine Blue Flame. I'll be testing it in a variety of pins and nib sizes ranging from a Pilot Extra Fine to a 1.5 stub nib, and I'm going to begin with the Pilot Extra Fine in my 78G. This is a steel extra fine nib. And this is very nice. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I'm going to say that it's not scratchy. But I don't think I would pick this up and use it for an everyday rider. If I needed an extra fine for just a little bit of riding, this would be usable, but let's see how the fine nib goes. This is a Pilot Pereira with a fine steel nib. Alright, this is much better. Now, see how much wetter that is. I'll say that this one's nice. Now, what I am noticing about this ink, this is very flowy. When I first wrote with it, it reminded me a lot of Asagao. It's in that same, it's very similar color to Iroshizuku Asagao, which is a really well-performing ink, well-behaved. But this one's a little bit more flowy, and so on that extra fine nib it started out really wet, but that ink flows out of the nib so quickly that it started feeling a little drier. The ink, I could tell on this fine nib, it was really putting down quite a bit of ink. Now, you may, I don't know if you can tell up here, this is a shimmer ink, and that fine nib put down quite a bit of ink. We may see some of the shimmer in it. Alright, this is a Pilot Custom 74 with a fine 14 karat nib. And this is a fairly wet fine nib to begin with, and paired with this flowy ink. So, yeah, that's putting down quite a bit of ink, and that was very smooth. I'm curious to see as these dry how much of the shimmer shows up. Next, I have a Quebeco Perchao, all black with a medium nib. Got to make sure I'm in focus. I like to use this pen for inks that I know that are gonna shade, show some shading properties. This is a pretty flat ink, but with it having that shimmer in it, I'm curious to see how that turns out. And this was just nice and smooth. Now this is my own personal preference. On darker inks like this, I don't prefer a wider nib unless there's some shading. But, you know, I'll go ahead and put, this was nice on this Tomoe River paper. That was pleasant writing. Alright, this is the Pilot Metropolitan with a cursive medium nib. This is very pleasant. Now, I just said that on dark inks like this, I don't prefer wider nibs unless it's an italic. For some reason, I don't mind it if it's an italic. I don't know, just makes my writing look nicer. I'm going to put on this one. This was smooth. Sometimes this cursive medium nib is not smooth if you've got a drier ink. All right, next I have a Diamine Singularity with a 0.6 stub nib. And this is a wet nib, and with this wet ink, it's a little, what I call, on the sloppy side. Just a little too much ink. So I'm not going to write anything on that one, or I'll write wet. In this case, a lot of times I prefer the Diamine. I just like the way it looks. It's less crisp than this cursive medium, but on this wet dark ink, I prefer the crispness of the cursive medium. Just looks neater. And finally, I have a Jinhao X750 with a 1.5 stub nib. And the ink is pouring out of this. That's a lot of ink. And that's going to take a little while to dry. So while it's drying, let's take a look at some writing samples on other papers. In my ARC notebook, this paper is a little bit more absorbent than Tomoe River. Let's see if I'm seeing the shimmer on all of them, but on these finer nibs you kind of have to look for it, but it's nice and visible from the medium up to the 1.5 stub. Now on this 1.5 stub, since the ink was just pouring out like you saw on that last writing sample, it dumped a bunch of shimmer here at the beginning, and then it's distributed a little bit more uniformly through the rest. Actually, there's less and less shimmer the more I write. I liked the way it looked in the Quebeco and the Pilot Metropolitan. I'm seeing some nice even shimmer in those. All right. On the Tomoe River paper, let's see. These were all, this is such a wet, flowy ink that the extra fine, I said that it was not scratchy, but I think I liked this the most. Just the writing experience, the fine through, the fine through the mediums, and that counts, the cursive medium counts in that, but the shimmer looks the best in the mediums. All right. On my 20-pound copy paper, let's see. The shimmer, you can see, if you look for the shimmer, you can see it, but it doesn't just jump out at you, really, on any of them. It's just very subtle shimmer. And for just the overall, just the writing experience of the ink on paper, I liked the finer nibs better. They were pleasant. And I was kind of surprised with this ink being so flowy. Normally, I don't like the Custom 74 on poor quality paper because it's wetter and the ink tends to spread. But this didn't do too bad. I was surprised. And I like the Pilot Metropolitan. better than the Perchao and the Nemesis. All right, let's see. It's not terrible about bleeding through the paper. It's pretty standard. Your stub nibs, your wetter nibs come through a little bit, but the others didn't do too bad. All right, so for just a plain everyday writing ink on poor quality paper, this isn't bad in fine nibs. All right, had to start a new page in my Leuchtturm, and I'm seeing just the beginning, a little hint of some red, like on the letters, I'm seeing a halo of red sheen, seeing a little, you can see the shimmer there, and it looked almost like there was going to be a little bit of shading. Now, the color of this ink, like I mentioned, is similar to Asagao, but look how much more saturated Asagao is. On the ink smear, that's a really saturated blue. See how much more less saturated it is. And I guess maybe that has something to do with, you know, it's got more lubricant in it. It's more flowy. All right, and finally on my Tomoe River paper, on this first bit of writing, look at all that shimmer in that. And so I do these writing samples by dipping. This was the 1.5 stub, so I dipped it, and the one up above it is the 0.6 stub. So I dipped those and labeled my page, and then down here, there's not quite as much shimmer, but there's still quite a bit. Let's see, and there's a little bit of a halo of red sheen on these wetter samples, but it would just a nice everyday writer in a fine nib too. Let's see, I don't see much shimmer. I can see it if I look for it, but you're not going to notice that this is a shimmer ink until you get up to, I'm not seeing much in the Perchao, which is surprising, but I liked my Pilot Metropolitan. I was able to see some shimmer. All right, not a bad ink, not quite as well behaved as Asagao, but not bad, better than most. All right, if you found this video helpful, please give me a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel.